Long ago, in a lush green forest nestled between towering mountains and a sparkling river, there lived a tortoise named Tiko. Tiko was no ordinary tortoise. He was known far and wide for his cunning nature. While other animals worked hard to gather food, build shelters, or tend to their families, Tiko always found clever ways to get what he wanted without much effort. He was proud of his smooth, unblemished shell, which shimmered in the sunlight like polished stone. But Tiko's cunning would soon lead him to learn a lesson he would never forget. One day, the forest animals gathered for a grand feast to celebrate the arrival of spring. The air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the trees were heavy with ripe fruits. The animals had worked together to prepare a magnificent spread, baskets of berries, nuts and honeycomb, as well as fresh greens and sweet roots. Everyone was excited to share in the bounty, everyone except Tiko. Tiko had no intention of contributing. Instead, he devised a plan to enjoy the feast without lifting a finger. As the animals prepared for the celebration, Tiko approached the wise old owl who was organizing the event. "Dear owl," Tiko said, his voice dripping with false humility, "I would love to help, but my shell is so heavy and my legs so slow. Perhaps I could guard the food instead. That way, I can ensure no thieves spoil our feast." The owl, trusting Tiko's words, agreed. "Very well, Tiko. Guard the food carefully, and we will save you a generous portion." Tiko nodded solemnly, but as soon as the owl flew away, he began to eat. He devoured the juiciest fruits, the sweetest honey, and the richest nuts. By the time the animals returned, the feast was nearly gone. "Tiko!" cried the rabbit, noticing the empty baskets. "What happened to the food?" Tiko put on a look of shock. "Oh, dear friends, a band of thieves came and stole everything. I tried to stop them, but they were too fast for me." The animals were disappointed but believed Tiko's lie. However, the wise owl was suspicious. He noticed crumbs stuck to Tiko's mouth and a trail of fruit peels leading to his hiding spot. But the owl said nothing, knowing that Tiko's deceit would catch up with him. A few days later, the animals decided to hold another feast to make up for the lost one. This time, they assigned the eagle to guard the food. Tiko, however, was determined to outsmart them again. He approached the eagle and said, "Dear eagle, you must be tired from flying all day. Why not rest while I guard the food? I'll keep a close watch, just like last time." The eagle, remembering the owl's warning, pretended to agree, but instead of resting, he hid in a nearby tree, watching Tiko closely. As soon as Tiko thought he was alone, he began to feast once more, but this time the eagle swooped down and caught him in the act. "Thief!" the eagle cried, alerting the other animals. The animals rushed to the scene and saw Tiko surrounded by empty baskets. Realizing he had been caught, Tiko tried to flee, but the eagle blocked his path. In his panic, Tiko tripped and tumbled down a rocky hill. His once smooth shell struck the sharp stones, leaving deep cracks and scars. When Tiko finally came to a stop, the animals gathered around him. The owl spoke gently but firmly. "Tiko, your cunning has brought you this fate. You deceived others for your own gain, and now your shell bears the marks of your dishonesty." Tiko hung his head in shame. From that day on, he carried the cracks on his shell as a reminder of his greed and deceit. For weeks, Tiko avoided the other animals, ashamed of what he had done. He spent his days alone, foraging for scraps and hiding in the shadows. But one day, as he wandered near the river, he heard a desperate cry for help. It was the rabbit who had been caught in a hunter's trap. Tiko hesitated. Helping the rabbit would mean revealing himself, and he was sure the animals would mock him or turn him away. But the rabbit's cries grew louder, and Tiko knew he couldn't ignore them. Summoning all his strength, Tiko used his sharp beak to gnaw at the ropes of the trap. It took hours, but finally, the rabbit was free. "Thank you, Tiko," the rabbit said, tears in his eyes. "I didn't think you would help me after what happened." Tiko sighed. "I've made many mistakes, but I don't want to be that tortoise anymore." Word of Tiko's good deed spread quickly through the forest. The animals were skeptical at first, but over time, they began to see a change in him. Tiko used his cleverness to help others. He outsmarted a pack of wolves that had been terrorizing the deer, and he even tricked a group of hunters into leaving the forest for good. One evening, as the animals gathered around a fire to celebrate their safety, the owl approached Tiko. "You have come a long way, my friend," the owl said. "Your shell may be cracked, but it is a symbol of your growth. You have learned that true wisdom lies in using your gifts for the good of others." Tiko smiled, his heart lighter than it had been in years. "I may have lost my perfect shell, but I have gained something far more valuable, the trust and friendship of those around me." From that day on, Tiko was no longer known as the cunning tortoise who tricked others. Instead, he was celebrated as the wise tortoise who used his cleverness to protect the forest and its inhabitants. And though his shell remained cracked, it shimmered in the sunlight, a reminder that even the deepest flaws can tell a story of redemption.